bottom step number one is control the bottom leg. Three different ways to control the bottom leg. One is with your weight, and you're just going to physically sit on it. Two is with your hand. You're going to create a staple. And then three is with the instep. You're going to place the instep over the crook of the knee and sit on it. So let's look at those in a little bit of detail here. So the first thing you have to do when you're holding half bar top is control the bottom leg. When I control it with my weight, which is usually where you get to first, I'm going to take my bottom leg and tuck it under like this. This also helps prevent the lockdown attack, but it gives me a tighter bite. I'm going to sit on my heel here, which creates a really nice lock on that leg. And then this knee is going to point at his belt here, which makes it harder for him to frame against my knee here. So that's holding down with my weight. Foot tucked in, sit on my heel, tuck my knee in to his hip here, and then just squeeze my knees together. That's one. Number two is holding down with my hand. So I'm going to grab cloth at the knee here, and then just staple this down like so. And then I'm going to create a really nice framing angle with my arm here that makes it a stronger position. So if you can imagine, just like taking a tent stake, putting the cloth on the ground here and hammering it in to keep him from pulling that leg out, that's what we're going to do. So grab and staple, reinforce with my knee, squeezing on top, and then I'm going to drop my shoulder until my arm is at about a 45-degree angle here like this. Create a really strong frame and make it hard for him to pull that leg out. With no gi, you just put your hand over the knee like this, wrap the knee. It's the same thing, creating that 45-degree angle frame. Keep your arms straight, and it should hold pretty well. Squeeze your knees together. And then lastly, blocking out or holding the bottom leg with the instep. In order to do that one, I have to remove this one. If I pull my instep over the top, while this leg is through, I'm really unbalanced and I can't hold here. So what I'm going to have to do is take this one out and bring this one over the top. It goes right in the crook of the knee here like that. And then again, to prevent him from framing on my knee, because if I'm not careful, he's going to frame on my knee here, this knee is going to come in like that. There. And that keeps him from framing. So, one, with my weight. Two, with my hand, staple, wrap, knee. And then three, take this one out, bring this one in, and close it in. Like so. Three different ways of holding down the bottom leg. After you've accomplished number one, which is locking down, holding.
Go ahead.
All right, after you've accomplished number one, which is locking down, holding the bottom leg, number two is going to be to control the hip. In particular, I want to control this top hip. If I don't control the hip, then the guy can really begin to wreak havoc right away. One of the things he can do is get the knee in, start pushing. That really sucks. He has the ability to move his hip in and out, up and down. So he can create a lot of motion with his hip. So I have to lock it down. That's number two. So let's look at a couple of different ways of locking the hip down. The first one I just call the sag and wrap. And that's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to turn it this way a little bit so you can see it. So I'm locking down with my weight, just like I did in the earlier video. For the sag and wrap, I'm just going to drop my chest down on his hip here and sag on it like that, applying downward pressure. And then I'm going to wrap with my arm low on the hip here. Not high up here, but low here. And you can grab cloth if you want, and my elbow squeezes in, like that. That way when Tim tries to move his hip, he's going to find it locked in. So he can't remove his bottom leg, and now his hip is locked down. When I do the sag and wrap, sometimes the guy will roll over to his back. If he does, I'm just going to follow. I'm not going to release that out or anything like that. I'm going to keep that hip wrapped up until I'm ready to go to the next step. So sag and wrap. Drop my chest on the hip, and then wrap it. A common mistake on sag and wrap would be to not lock the hip, but to come up here to the chest like this and wrap. And you can see I'm not touching his hip at all, his hip's free move. So make sure you keep it low when you do a sag and wrap. Alright, another good way of locking down the hip. I'll be there Saturday. We're going to do a hip sprawl on the hip bone. And this is a really effective one, and I think it's a great pressure to have from top. So I'll demonstrate it first, and then I'll break it down into pieces. All right, hip sprawl, pieces of the hip sprawl. Number one, my hip bone has to contact his hip bone and nowhere else. Not the thigh, not the chest, it has to be hip bone to hip bone. Number two, I need to be in line with his body and not off at an angle. So if I got hip bone to hip bone and I'm at an angle, it's not going to work. I got to be in line with his body. Number three, I'm going to curve my body so that my hips are at the lowest point and my shoulders and legs come up. So I'm making this U shape with my body. So if you watch just the U shape here. So hip to hip in line with his body, U shape, and then with my legs, the trap leg, the one between his two, my heel drives hard to my backside. So watch my trap leg, this one is driving hard to my backside here. And then lastly, my non-trap leg, my left leg here, it's going to squeeze together from knee to thigh like this to hold and pinch his leg so he can't pull his leg out, because that was number one. So watch my left leg or my non-trap leg here, and I'm going to squeeze together right here so that I got his leg trapped. Right there. My hands are free in this particular posture to use for other things. Initially, when I get into this posture, my hands just use for balance so I don't get rolled over. There. But I'll use my hands to establish grips in a minute. Hip sprawl. I can sprawl, and sometimes he'll flatten out, and sometimes he won't. So if I'm lucky, when I get a good sprawl, he'll flatten right out. There. And then I can move on. Sometimes if you hip sprawl, if the guy's really intent on staying bent over, he won't sprawl out. Or he won't flatten out. Here it is, here. So I got a good hip sprawl, but he didn't flatten out. So in order to flatten him out here, I'm just going to take this leg, put my toes on the mat, and walk in flat. I'm still going to keep squeezed around his leg, so I'm only going to move from the knee down. So if you watch, I'm not using my hands, just using my feet. Walking flat. So hip sprawl, doesn't go flat. Squeeze, drive my heel to my ass, create my U shape, and then walk with my foot. Flatten him out. Once I lock down the bottom leg and control the hip, my next step is to begin to flatten the bottom guy out. So control the bottom leg, control the hip, flatten him out. We already looked at one way of flattening him out with the hip sprawl, the clamp, and the walk over, so I'll demonstrate that one more time. Hip sprawl, clamp on that leg, and then walk. Let's look at a couple of other methods. So I'm going to lock down his bottom leg with my weight, so my foot's here, sitting on my heel, tucking my knee in, and I'm going to sag and wrap around his hip here. So I'm doing 1 and 2. Now I'm ready to flatten him out. First one I'm going to do is with my head. So what I have to do is lower my head, drive it forward, and then turn out his chin. It's going to look like this. Lower my head to center, drive forward until the top of my head, I feel it touching his chin. And then I'm going to use that as an extra arm, spin his head around and drive it. You should feel a little bit like an asshole doing it. If you do, you probably do it just right. Lock down the legs, sag and wrap. There. Right. Let's look at another couple of ways to flatten them out here. I got my sag and wrap. It could be that I'm afraid to let this go because I'm afraid his hip's going to bump out. So I'm going to use a pry bar here to flatten him out. I'm going to grab cloth on his collar, whatever I can grab, doesn't have to be too deep. And then the pry bar is done by turning my hand over like this. So I lead with my elbow. It almost feels like I'm putting my hand in my back pocket like that. So you'll see the pry in motion on this. Hand goes here, I'm going to pry over. Grab, pry over flat, that's the pry bar. And then let's see, one last one. I'm doing a sag and wrap here. This time maybe Tim is attempting to frame on my knee there with his hand or his elbow, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and do a shoulder justice because I can reach his chin pretty easy here. So I'm going to drive in until I bury all the way to the elbow, like so, and then I'm going to use my shoulder to flatten him out here. Shoulder justice. So I do this one when their head is in close like this, so I can get it easy. Wrap all the way to the elbow, and then use the shoulder. Flatten him out and turn over. So flattening him out, let's review. Hip sprawl, sprawl, squeeze, walking flat. Sag and wrap with the head. Sag and wrap, pry bar. And then lastly, if he's in tight, shoulder adjust this about deep, and then use the shoulder. That's step 3, flattening the guy out. Okay, I'm going to do a quick review of the half-guard material we've covered so far, and then I'm going to move ahead. So step number 1 in half-guard top is capturing the bottom leg. What we went over so far is capturing it with the weight. Foot in, sit on your heel, squeeze your leg in, point it at the hip. Capture it with your hand. Grab cloth, staple it to the mat. Squeeze your knees together and then drop your shoulder at a 45-degree angle, and then capturing it with your foot, which means removing this foot. This one goes over into the instep here, or into the crook behind the knee, and then I bring my knee in to make it a little harder for the frame against it. That's step 1, and that's the 3 main ways of capturing and holding on to this leg. Generally, when you first land, you start with your weight, and then you progress out to holding it with either your hand or your foot, and then you can pass. Step number 2 was controlling the hip. We looked at 2 different ways of controlling the hip. There are probably more, but these 2 work really well. The first one was the sag and wrap. So for that one, I'm going to sag my weight down, apply my chest to his hip, and then wrap my arm. And then the next one was going to be a hip sprawl. To hip sprawl, I'll line my body up with Larry's, curve my back into the U shape, squeeze my knees together to hold on to his leg. So it looks like this. Hip sprawl, like that. Squeezing my legs together from my hip to my knee to make sure I maintain control of his leg. My back is in a curve here. The trapped leg, the heel drives to my backside, which keeps his leg trapped. And if he's up on his side, when I land, I can flatten him out just by walking this leg over, like so. So flattening out, we just saw the first one, which is to walk out from the hip sprawl. Another good way to flatten out is with the head. So I'm going to lower my head, drive forward, and then use my head to lever him over. Second one we looked at was a pry bar. I'm going to grab cloth and then use my elbow to flatten out. A third one is a shoulder adjustment. This works great when Larry's attacking my knee here with the frame, because he brings his head in to do that. All the way to the elbow, wrap, and then use my shoulder to flatten out. So that's what we did so far. I want to look at next a couple of scenarios, options you can go to if you're having trouble with that third step. The third step is flattening him out. First step, capture the leg. Second step, capture the hip. Step 3, I would call attempt to flatten him out. If in my attempt to flatten him out I'm not successful, we'll look at a couple of other different options here. Option 1, I'm going to turn and face the legs. Here's how I would do that one. I'll demonstrate it first and then we'll break down the details. Right. So step 1, I'm going to drive in the area between the ear and shoulder, and I'm going to give my elbow to the mat. My hip is going to land as close to his head as possible. So my hip lands close to his head. I can cross over this space and connect my elbow to the mat, like this. Once I land, I'm going to back my ass up. And that'll help keep him from being able to roll me, and it'll put me in a much better posture so that I'm more stable. So I'm going to land and then watch me back my butt up with the shrimp. From here, what happens most often is the bottom guy will attempt an upa to try to roll me over. The nice thing about that is in order to do that, he has to release my leg. He's got to open up his legs to do that. So the timing on this is, when his legs open up to upa, I just pull mine out. So it'll look like this. Okay? When I pull my leg out, I throw it back really far to give me a frame against this upa so I don't get rolled. If I don't throw my leg back far enough, I'm going to get rolled. So I'll demonstrate what happens if I don't throw my leg back far enough. I got rolled. Now I'll throw my leg back really far to here, which will give me a little bit of a brace against the upa so I'm not going to get rolled. Right there. Okay. If, instead of opening up an upa, he just hangs onto the leg, let's go ahead and open that up. Land on my elbow, back my butt up. He's not opening up here, so let's open it up for him. What's going to help is I'm going to take my foot and I'm going to walk it in. If you look at my toes, they're going to walk in as close to his backside as possible. And when I do that, my knee's going to pop through, and it's going to be hard for him to hold on. So Larry's going to grab my leg really tight here. He's not going to want to let it go. I'm going to walk that up. If you watch my foot walking up, I'm going to get it really close to his backside. When I get it in as close as I can, it's going to be really easy for me to shove my knee through like that. Once my knee shoved through this bottom leg, we'll just attach to his, and then I'll be able to pry my leg up real easy. So one more time, if he locks tight, I'm just going to walk up. And when I get close, he won't be able to resist me doing that. My bottom knee will come in and brace, pull out. Pretty easy. That's the sit the legs pass. Next we'll look at what I call the capoeira pass. Okay, now we're going to look at the capoeira pass. I'll demonstrate it once and then we'll break it down. I've demonstrated it a couple of times because there's a couple of different ways of doing it. Okay, the capoeira pass gives you a pass flipping in the opposite direction. It's great to have techniques that work in opposite directions in jiu-jitsu. So again, this is when I can't get Larry flattened out. This is one I can go to. The most important part of the capoeira pass is capturing this knee. And that's what will prevent Larry from turning up into me and taking top. So I'm going to go over and then we'll look at the knee position here because that's the important part. So when I come over here, my knee has to scoop in underneath his knee like that and lock in. So now when Larry tries to turn into me, even though I'm not using my hands, he can't turn in. Because I scooped and captured his knee here. If I happen to not capture his knee here, I'm going to be in trouble. So that's really the most important part of the capoeira pass, is scooping and capturing the knee. Now let's look at that one more time. Capture the knee. Right there. If you do that, your hands are not quite as important here. The capture the knee will prevent him from going over. Oftentimes from here, when a guy starts to try to turn into me, to take top, I'll just scoop that leg as he's spinning around. Yeah. And I'll win that battle every time. So capture the knee. Two ways of capturing the knee in capoeira. One is I can capture the knee before I go over, like so, just by stepping over, swooping it, and then fall. Two, I can step out really wide and then scoop in to capture it. So this is the second way. Step out really wide and then scoop in under. Again, let's look at the wide step. Like so. I'm going to capture that leg. So that'll capture the leg, make it easy to hold right there. guy's being really insistent and holding on tight here, it becomes pretty easy just to kick that off. At that point, it's going to come right off. So it's really hard for it to hold from that position. So if we look at the turning in both directions, it looks like this. We're going to do both. And you can see how those motions complement each other. Both motions you can use, but you cannot get the bottom back flat. All right, half guard top. Step 1, control the bottom leg. Step 2, control the hip. Step 3, flatten him out. Step 4 is get your grips and pass. So let's look at gripping positions once I got Larry flat that are available to you that work pretty well in passing. I won't necessarily work on showing the passes, but the grips. Once you get to the grips, the passes are pretty self-explanatory. Good grip number 1 is forearm underhook, head on the mat, really close to his head, applying pressure, looks like this. This hand is extra. Grip number 2, same head position with double underhooks. Here, grab the collar, squeeze your elbows in, attach your head really close to his. Works really well. Another alternative grip would be what we call shoulder of justice. Underhook on this side, deep shoulder of justice here, and applying pressure with your shoulder on the chin, like so. In this case, my head can't go to that side. It's physically impossible. My head may or may not rest on this side if I need the extra support to build the base. I like my head on the mat here. So, quick review. Underhook, head on the mat. Double underhooks, grab collar, squeeze elbows, head on the mat. Underhook, shoulder of justice. If you notice in all 3 of those, I'm getting the underhook on this side. That's really key in having a dominant half guard top position. All right, let's look at a couple of quick troubleshooting things because these things will come up. Number 1, Larry gets the underhook on this side instead of me. That's a problem. If the bottom guy gets an underhook, you always have to address it right away. You can't ignore it. So let's address Larry's underhook. I'm working with Larry. He scoops underneath here. It's going to be really hard for me to re-pummel because he's going to be gone if I try to re-pummel. So if I try to re-pummel here, yeah, Larry's coming out the back. He's going to take mine. Not going to work. So we're going to have to kill it. So Larry gets an underhook here. What I'm going to do is use the sag and the wrap. And I got to back up to his hip here, sag and wrap like this, and his underhook goes away. It doesn't work. This is a perfect opportunity to use the face to legs pass, which will automatically kill his underhook here. So I've come down here and blocked it, so his underhook's not workable, and it's opened up this space, so watch. Now I'll do the face to legs pass. Kills his underhook, and gives me a good pass. So again, Larry feeds an underhook. I'm going to back up and attach down low to control his hip. Kill the underhook. Switch to the face to legs pass that we just did. Here. Another big one that you'll find is a problem is bottom guys framing on the knee here, like this. Now initially we take care of that by just keeping the knee in, but sometimes guys will dig it out and they really start applying pressure and you find your knee coming out here, like that. When a guy is doing this, he's presenting his neck for the cross face. So instead of spending my time trying to pull this out, he's giving me a perfect opportunity by bringing his head close to my body here. So as Larry's pushing on my knee here, I'm just going to go ahead and take a cross face and it'll take care of this in the course of flattening him out. Like that. So he's presenting me the opportunity of bringing his head close to my body. That's 2 real common things you'll encounter when you're in half guard top, is guys framing on the knee and then guys doing the underhook. If you take care of both of those right away, you're going to be in The other opportunity that the framing on the knee will present you is the capoeira pass. So if Larry comes in, he's up on his side, he's pushing that really hard. He's framing out here, so I can't get to the cross face. Then I'm just gonna come over here and get the capoeira pass, which removes the knee that he was framing against here, so I can take that pass. So you can see how the passing energies work together. Face the legs, capoeira, drive it flat, and go over. Just a few simple postures, pressures, and techniques, and it builds a full half-guard top system.